The city pulsed with life under the glow of its dazzling evening lights. Streets buzzed with people, rushing cars honked impatiently, and laughter spilled out from trendy cafes. Amid this vibrant chaos, Maxwell Jameson, a billionaire with a sharp suit and an air of confidence, stepped out of his sleek black car. Known for his power and precision, Max usually moved through life with calculated ease. But tonight, something was different. As he surveyed the bustling streets, his gaze stopped on an unexpected sight. A woman wrapped in a worn coat, huddled in the shadow of a building. She sat quietly, her tangled hair partially hiding her face, while the world passed her by without a second glance. But Max couldn't look away. There was something about her. A quiet dignity that shone despite her circumstances, a resilience that spoke louder than the clamor of the city. Max's polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he approached her, his heart pounding with an uncharacteristic curiosity. Little did he know this moment, this unlikely meeting, was about to change both of their lives in ways neither could have imagined. When a billionaire's world collides with the unexpected, the narrator continues. An ordinary proposition leads to an extraordinary transformation. Maxwell Jameson was a name that commanded attention. A powerful and enigmatic billionaire, his sharp business acumen had reshaped industries, while his polished public persona made him a favorite of the media. He was the kind of man who could sway markets with a single decision and turn heads wherever he went. Yet behind the immaculate suits, luxurious penthouse, and glittering reputation lay a life defined by hollow routines and shallow connections. Tonight, Max faced yet another obligation. A high-profile charity gala brimming with New York's elite. But this wasn't just any event. With his recent, very public breakup with a famous actress, the tabloids were hungry for a story. He needed a date who would make an impression, someone who could silence the whispers and redirect the narrative. As he stepped onto the crowded streets, scanning the sea of faces, his thoughts were a mix of frustration and calculation. And then he saw her. She sat in a shadowed corner, wrapped in a worn, oversized coat, her head slightly bowed as if trying to disappear into the city's chaos. People rushed by, oblivious to her presence, but Max's gaze lingered. There was something about her, an air of quiet dignity that seemed unshaken by the hardships etched into her features. Her resilience was undeniable, her presence understated yet profound. For the first time in a long while, Max's carefully curated plans took a backseat to a feeling he couldn't quite explain. He took a step toward her, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. What he was about to do would defy every expectation of his high society world, and set in motion a story that would change everything. Max approached her cautiously, his steps purposeful but measured. As he drew closer, the woman glanced up, startled by the unexpected attention. Her wary eyes met his, guarded yet piercing, as if she were trying to gauge his intentions. "Excuse me," Max began, his voice calm but sincere. "I have a rather unusual proposition for you." She narrowed her eyes, clutching her coat tighter. "What kind of proposition?" she asked, suspicion evident in her tone. "I need a date," Max said plainly, "for a formal event tonight. It's important, and I'm willing to compensate you for your time $5,000, just for the evening." The woman blinked, stunned into silence. She glanced at her scuffed shoes, her mind racing. This couldn't be real. "You want me?" she finally asked, incredulous. "Yes," Max replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "You seem intriguing. It would make for an interesting evening." She let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not interested." "Wait," he said gently, his tone softening. "I understand this sounds strange, but I assure you, it's genuine. Just a few hours of your time, and I'll make it worth your while." She hesitated, her eyes searching his face for any hint of deceit. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "How much did you say?" $5,000, Max repeated, his voice unwavering. Her hands trembled as she processed the offer. The thought of what she could do with that kind of money, food, shelter, maybe even a fresh start, was too tempting to ignore. She looked back at him, her expression a mix of caution and disbelief. "All right," she murmured. "I'll do it." "Maxwell Jameson," he said, extending his hand with a warm smile. She hesitated for a moment before shaking it. "Sophia," she replied quietly. Before she could second-guess her decision, Max escorted her to a sleek black car that waited nearby. Sophia sat stiffly in the plush leather seat, her eyes wide as they sped through the bustling city streets. They stopped in front of an upscale boutique, its gleaming windows displaying elegant gowns and luxurious accessories. Sophia's brows furrowed. "Why are we here?" she asked, her confusion evident. "If you're going to be my date," Max said with a gentle smile, "you need to look the part. Let's get you ready." She was whisked inside, where a team of stylists descended upon her like a whirlwind. As they worked, Sophia sat in front of a mirror, watching as years of hardship seemed to fade away. Her tangled hair was transformed into soft, flowing waves. The dirt on her face was replaced with a subtle glow, and her worn clothes were swapped for a sleek, dark green gown that hugged her frame elegantly. When she finally stepped out, Max's breath caught. He had expected her to look presentable, but she was stunning, poised, graceful, and utterly captivating. "You look amazing," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Sophia glanced at him, her cheeks flushing. "Let's just get this over with," she replied, though a hint of trust crept into her tone. As they left the boutique and stepped into the waiting car, neither of them realized that this wasn't just the start of an evening. It was the beginning of something far greater than either of them had imagined. The sleek black car pulled up to the entrance of the grand ballroom, its golden chandeliers glowing brightly through the tall windows. Maxwell stepped out first, radiating his signature confidence, and extended a hand to Sophia. She hesitated for a brief moment before placing her hand in his, stepping into a world so unlike her own. Inside, the gala was a dazzling spectacle. The air hummed with soft classical music, and the room was alive with conversation. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits sipped champagne as waiters moved gracefully between them. As Max and Sophia entered, all eyes turned their way. The whispers started almost immediately. "Who is she? She's not one of us. Maxwell Jameson always has a surprise, doesn't he?" Sophia clung to Max's arm, her unease palpable. "Everyone's staring," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Let them stare," Max replied gently, his hand resting reassuringly on her back. "You don't have to be anyone but yourself." His words settled her nerves, if only slightly. Taking a deep breath, she lifted her chin and followed him into the crowd. As introductions were made, Sophia's natural sincerity began to shine. Unlike the polished, rehearsed small talk of the elite, her words carried a refreshing authenticity. When a wealthy couple asked about her thoughts on art and philanthropy, she spoke with quiet conviction. "I think it's important to remember that wealth doesn't define character," she said, her voice steady. "Some of the strongest, kindest people I've met had nothing, yet they gave more than anyone I've ever known." The couple, taken aback at first, soon nodded thoughtfully. Around her, others began to listen more closely, their curiosity turning into genuine interest. Max, standing slightly behind her, watched in awe. In a room full of people accustomed to superficiality, Sophia's raw honesty stood out like a beacon. She wasn't playing a role or trying to impress anyone. She was simply herself. As the evening progressed, Sophia's confidence grew. She laughed at witty remarks, shared her candid thoughts, and even challenged the overly polished opinions of some of the wealthier guests. Each moment only deepened Max's admiration for her. "You're incredible," he whispered to her during a quiet moment by the champagne fountain. Sophia looked at him, startled by the sincerity in his voice. She smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm just trying not to embarrass you." Max chuckled softly. "You could never embarrass me. In fact, you've reminded me tonight what it means to be real." As the gala drew on, Max found himself captivated by her every word and gesture. Sophia, who had entered this world feeling like an outsider, now stood at its center, radiating a quiet strength and grace that no gown or jewelry could create. As the night unfolded, Max and Sophia found themselves retreating to a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the constant chatter and watchful gazes. With glasses of champagne in hand, they engaged in a conversation that felt surprisingly intimate amidst the grandeur. Sophia spoke candidly, her guard slowly lowering with each word. She shared fragments of her life, the relentless struggles of surviving on the streets, the moments of kindness from strangers that gave her hope, and the dreams she once held close. "I used to love painting," she said softly, her eyes distant. "I'd spend hours creating, imagining a future where my art could tell stories. But life doesn't always go the way you plan." Max listened intently, captivated by the depth of her words. She wasn't just recounting hardships. She was baring her soul, unfiltered and raw. In her honesty, he found a perspective that was completely foreign to his polished, insulated world, a perspective that challenged everything he thought he valued. "You should paint again," Max said, his voice steady. "You have a story worth sharing, Sophia." She looked at him, startled by the sincerity in his tone. "It's not that simple," she replied, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "When you're just trying to survive, dreams feel like luxuries." Max's heart ached at her words, a stark reminder of the privilege he had always taken for granted. Their conversation was interrupted by an older man approaching them, a former college acquaintance of Max's who was known for his subtle jabs. With a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the man looked between Max and Sophia. "Maxwell," the man began, his voice dripping with polite curiosity. "I see you've brought a unique guest tonight. Care to introduce us?" Sophia stiffened, her eyes darting to Max, unsure of how he would respond. Max's jaw tightened, his protective instincts kicking in. Without hesitation, he placed a hand gently on Sophia's back and said, "Sophia and I are very close." His tone was firm, leaving no room for doubt. The man raised an eyebrow but quickly composed himself. "Ah, well, it's lovely to meet you, Sophia," he said, though his interest clearly waned as he excused himself. Sophia turned to Max, her expression a mix of gratitude and confusion. "Why did you say that?" Max met her gaze, his voice soft but resolute. "Because it's true. Tonight, I've learned more from you than I have from anyone in a long time. And because I won't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." Sophia's breath hitched, her heart pounding at his words. She wasn't sure what to say, but for the first time in years, she felt seen, not as an outsider, but as someone who mattered. As the night continued, their connection deepened, their conversations weaving a bond neither of them had anticipated. What had begun as a simple arrangement was becoming something far more profound. As the evening began to wind down, Max led Sophia to a quieter terrace just beyond the bustling ballroom. The city stretched out before them, the lights twinkling like 1,000 distant dreams. The hum of the gala faded into the background, leaving only the soft rustle of the cool night breeze. Sophia leaned against the railing, her eyes wandering over the skyline. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Max nodded, but his focus wasn't on the view, it was on her. He had spent the entire evening captivated by her, and now, with the night nearing its end, an unfamiliar urgency tugged at him. "Sophia," he began, his voice unusually hesitant. "I need to say something." She turned to face him, her expression cautious but curious. "I thought this would just be one night," Max admitted, his gaze steady. "A chance to deflect attention, to avoid the scrutiny of my world for a little while. But," he hesitated, searching for the right words, "you've made me see things differently tonight. You've reminded me of what's real, what actually matters." Sophia's brow furrowed as she studied him, her voice soft and uncertain. "Max, why would someone like you?" She gestured vaguely, as if his wealth and status needed no explanation. "Want anything to do with someone like me?" Max stepped closer, the vulnerability in his eyes surprising even himself. "Because I've spent my life surrounded by people who wear masks, people who say what they think I want to hear. You're the first person in years who's been completely honest with me." You're not trying to impress anyone or fit into some mold. You're just you." Sophia looked away, her fingers tightening around the edge of the railing. "I don't belong in your world, Max. I don't fit." Max shook his head, his voice firm yet gentle. "My world is empty, Sophia. I've built empires, amassed wealth, attended countless events like this, and yet I've never felt more disconnected. Tonight, for the first time in years, I've felt something real. And it's because of you." Sophia's heart pounded in her chest as his words sank in. She didn't know how to respond, the weight of his confession leaving her speechless. Max took a deep breath, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I don't want this to end with the gala. I don't know what's next, but I do know I want to figure it out with you." Sophia stared at him, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic mix of disbelief, fear, and a faint flicker of hope. She had spent so long guarding herself from the world, but here was a man willing to step into her reality, not to change her, but to understand her. For the first time that night, she allowed herself to wonder if this unlikely connection could lead to something more. The gala was nearing its end, but for Maxwell Jameson, the most significant moment of the night was yet to come. Standing in the grand ballroom, surrounded by New York's elite, Max couldn't shake the realization that his life had shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. Sophia stood beside him, still out of place in the opulence of the evening, but carrying herself with a quiet strength that had captivated everyone she'd spoken to. Max glanced at her, his heart pounding with a certainty he had never felt before. The room buzzed with soft conversations and clinking glasses, but Max took a step forward, clearing his throat. The subtle action quieted the crowd, all eyes turning toward him. Sophia looked at him, confusion flickering across her face. "Excuse me," Max said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "I have something I'd like to say." Sophia's breath hitched as Max turned to face her fully, reaching into his jacket pocket. When he sank to one knee, the crowd gasped collectively, and whispers rippled through the ballroom. "Sophia," Max began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Tonight wasn't supposed to be anything more than a distraction, a way to escape the noise of my world. But you," he paused, gazing up at her, "you've shown me something I didn't know I was missing. You've reminded me what it feels like to be real, to connect, and to see the beauty in simplicity." Sophia's eyes widened, her heart pounding in her chest. The diamond ring Max revealed sparkled under the golden chandeliers, but her focus was entirely on his expression. Earnest, vulnerable, and unwavering. "I know this is sudden," Max continued, his voice softening, "but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You are what my life has been missing, Sophia. Will you marry me?" The room fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone watching. Sophia's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. The enormity of the gesture, the sincerity in his words. It was overwhelming. "Max," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't know what to say. I'm just a woman from the streets. Why would you want someone like me?" Max's gaze never wavered. "Because no one has ever made me feel the way you do. You see me for who I am, not what I have. That's all I've ever wanted." Sophia hesitated, the insecurities she'd carried for years rising to the surface. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw nothing but truth and love. Slowly, a tear slipped down her cheek as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the grand room as Max stood, pulling Sophia into his arms. He held her tightly, his own eyes glistening with emotion. Sophia felt something she hadn't in years: security, warmth, belonging. And for Max, this wasn't just the end of a gala. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one he hadn't realized he was ready for until now. As the applause swelled around them, Max and Sophia stood together, two lives forever changed by a single, extraordinary night. Months had passed since that unforgettable night at the gala, and Sophia's life had transformed in ways she never imagined. Gone were the days of uncertainty and hardship. Now, she used her newfound platform to give back to the community she had once been part of. becoming a passionate advocate for homeless initiatives. Through public speaking and charitable campaigns, Sophia raised awareness about the struggles of those often overlooked by society. Her sincerity and personal experiences resonated deeply with people, inspiring change. She wasn't just Max's fiancée, she was a voice for the voiceless. Max, too, had changed. Once consumed by the pressures of his high-profile life, he found himself embracing a new sense of purpose. With Sophia's grounding influence, he shifted his focus from building empires to building a legacy that mattered, supporting her dreams and investing in meaningful causes. Their relationship had become a partnership in every sense of the word. Max brought his resources and influence, while Sophia brought her authenticity and determination. Together, they proved that love wasn't about status or wealth. It was about connection, understanding, and shared purpose. One crisp evening, the two strolled through the city hand in hand, the skyline glowing softly above them. Max glanced at Sophia, her face illuminated by the golden streetlights. "You've changed my world," he said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. Sophia smiled, leaning into him. "And you've shown me what it means to dream again." As they walked, laughter and warmth surrounding them, their journey felt like a testament to the power of love to bridge even the widest divides. They didn't just defy expectations, they redefined them. The story ends not with a grand gesture or dramatic twist, but with a simple truth, that love, grounded in trust and respect, can conquer even the most daunting barriers. Together, Max and Sophia faced the future, ready to take on whatever challenges came their way, side by side. Sometimes, life's most extraordinary moments are born from the most unexpected connections. Max and Sophia's story is a testament to the power of love, courage, and compassion. A reminder that no divide is too great to overcome when hearts are willing to meet in the middle. Their journey shows us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the depth of our relationships and the impact we leave on the world. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a little inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales of love, transformation, and second chances. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.